Tonight on the program, I hope you're being strengthened and blessed in the things of the Lord. I'm going to show you tonight what systemic rot is, what the Bible talks about whenever the Bible tells us that woe be unto you when the wicked beareth rule over you. Now, there's consequences that's one's going to have to pay. Once they allow wickedness to take hold of governmental systems. Now, it's been that way from the beginning of time, and if it was not an important issue, the Bible would not have directly dealt with it. Now, whenever we look back and we see what's called political and how that today there are these particular political groups that does not want Christianity or an opposing voice saying anything about politics. They tell us, don't talk about politics. Is this a political program or is it a religious program? Well, it's neither. This right here is neither a religious program, nor is this a political program. This is a Bible program. The Bible is not religious. Christianity is not a religion. It is a living fellowship between living beings, the living Christ, the living God, and those who have been born again and has become the children of that living God. It's a fellowship. It's not a religion. When the Bible is talking about politics, it's talking about wickedness being worked out through human beings who has gained now power through politics over the majority of the world, if not the whole city, the whole county, the whole state. There is no way to deal with politics without dealing with the human beings that are in politics. And tonight's program is going to be, I think, once again, manifestation of that as we go to the very highest order of law enforcement in the United States, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, AG, number one man, the man the Democrats fought tooth and nail to try to get him on the Supreme Court. Well, now they've got him as the head law enforcement agency, but like Joe Biden, he seems a little bit out of it. And he don't know very much, like Biden. As we deal with this man who wrote a letter stating that he would put the FBI on parents and that they were to be considered for going to school board meetings, parents for going to school board meetings would be deemed domestic terrorists. All the way from the top office of the law enforcement agencies of the United States of America, parents. Now, before we go any further, let's look at a passage of Scripture. This passage of Scripture in Samuel 12:3 says, "Behold, here I am," Samuel says, as he's talking about just before Saul comes to be the king. "Behold, here I am, witness against me before the Lord and before his anointed. Whose ox have I taken?" he asked. "Whose ass have I taken? Of whom have I defrauded? Whom have I oppressed? Or of whose hand, listen, have I received any bribe to blind mine eyes therewith?" Now that's what I want to talk about. Samuel is talking about his honest actions, that he, as the prophet over Israel, had wronged nobody. And he tells us here that he had taken bribes from no one to blind his eyes. This telling us that the purpose of bribery, the purpose of bribes, is to blind one's eyes. Now, here is the heart and soul of the corruption in the U.S. government. Here's the heart and soul of corruption in the law enforcement agencies. It is special interest groups who wants special things, who promises big money to the candidate, to the law enforcement. Then they owe them because they become the source of their power, and it blinds them to the justice that's around them. I want you to keep that in mind as I show you in a few minutes the Merrick Garland tapes. It goes on to tell us about bribery. It says here in the book of Amos 5:12, For I know your manifold transgressions and your mighty sins. They afflict the just, they take a bribe, they turn aside the poor in the gate from their rights. So the Bible is telling us here that this thing called bribery has a blinding effect. And once government officials are there no longer to do the deeds of the people, but they're there to do the deeds of those paying them the bribes, their eyes becomes blind. Let's go into these questions that was presented to the head law enforcement official in the United States of America, Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. Here's the first questions. The first one will deal with these three things: the Justice Department being weaponized, Obama, the swamp and the hidden government, and the difference between law and politics. Let's listen.
For 8 years under Barack Obama, the Department of Justice was politicized and weaponized. When you came before this committee in your confirmation hearing, you promised things would be different. I asked you specifically, quote, will you commit to this committee that under your leadership, the Department of Justice will not target the political opponents of this administration? Here was your answer, quote, absolutely. It's totally inappropriate for the department to target any individual because of their politics or their position in a campaign. That was your promise just a few months ago. I'm sorry to say you have broken that promise. There is a difference between law and politics. And General Garland, you know the difference between law and politics. Law is based on facts. It is impartial. It is not used as a tool of political retribution. This memo was not law. This memo was politics.
There is a difference in law and politics, certainly. You're dealing with law, you're dealing with one thing. You're dealing with politics, you're dealing with another. The judge, Merrick Garland, knows this. The paper that Mr. Cruz was speaking of was the paper that Garland sent out, making terrorists out of American parents for going to school board meetings. It was not law, it was politics. Number two, the National School Board Association writes a letter. That's what Garland was responding to. 5 days later, the AG, Merrick Garland, declares parents domestic terrorists. The National School Board is a political organization, and it was this political organization Garland responded to.
On Wednesday, September 29th, the National School Board Association wrote a letter to the president asking the president to use the Department of Justice to target parents that were upset at critical race theory, that were upset at mask mandates in schools, to target them as domestic terrorists. On the face of the letter was in repeated consultation with the White House, in explicit political consultation with the White House. That was on Wednesday, September 29th. 5 days later, on Monday, so right after the weekend, boom, you pop out a memo, giving them exactly what they want.
When this political organization wrote to the president, no facts checked, within 5 days, the Attorney General was declaring U.S. mothers and fathers domestic terrorists. The next one, the very letter used by the AG to declare parents terrorists. The AG does not know how many incidents, that is, of terrorism was in any of the letters. The AG does not know how many violent acts was committed in the letter. The AG determined parents to be terrorists based on no investigation, and according to his own testimony, he had no knowledge of any acts of terrorism or even any incidents. That he wrote a letter saying that the U.S. parents was domestic terrorist.
In the letter, which you told the House of Representatives was the basis for this abusive memo targeting parents, How many incidents are cited in that memo?
I have to look back through the memo. I
Okay,
can't count it.
you don't know. How many of them were violent?
Again, the general report.
How many of them were violent? Do you know?
I don't know.
You don't know. And there's a reason you don't know. Because you didn't care, and nobody in your office cared to find out.
So when the Attorney General is asked about the memo that he sent out and concerning how many crimes was even committed, he's either lying or he says he has no idea, meaning that either he's lying or he never even read the report. Why would he not read the report? Why would the Attorney General not even know why he sent a memo out saying that parents was domestic terrorist? You'd think that the Attorney General would know exactly why he said that. This is corruption to the absolute highest level. You and me are being called by our head enforcement of the law, by our leaders of law enforcement, and the top spot, we are being called terrorist. And it goes on. He's asked of the 20 charges, none of which he can say is violent.
15 on their face are nonviolent. They involve things like insults. They involve a Nazi salute. That's one of the examples. My God, a parent did a Nazi salute at a school board because he thought the policies were oppressive. General Garland is doing a Nazi salute at an elected official. Is that protected by the First Amendment?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
The parents was given the Nazi sign to what they figured to be Nazis, those who were acting like Nazis. The school board trying to ram pornography and critical race theory down the throats of our children, both white and black parents there, condemning them. There was no laws broken. Garland cannot cite a law that was broken, but yet he still sent a memo out saying that we, the parents, are terrorists.
Yet, miraculously, when you write a memo, the opening line of your memo, in recent months, there has been a disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence. You know what? You didn't look, and nobody on your staff looked. Did you even look up the 20 instances?
As I testified, the decision to send a memo is for an assessment.
Did you look up the 20 instances?
I did not read.
Did anyone on your staff look them up?
I don't know the answer, but it's not
But of course you don't. In general, there's a reason.
You send out a memo stating that American mothers and fathers are terrorists, and you do not even know what was in the letter that was wrote to you from a political organization, the National School Board Association. You do not even know if your people in the AG's office, you don't even know if they know what was in it. So then, Mr. Garland, how could you and why would you write a letter calling American parents terrorists over something you never even looked at, never even read, nor anyone in your office ever read it? It is because the eyes is blinded by the bribe. Follow the money. Do you realize what happens when they make you a terrorist? That means everything in the Patriot Act can be applied to you. That means you can be imprisoned without even a hearing. And you are being called a terrorist by the head man of the Justice Department of the United States of America, and he does not even know why he's called you that, other than he was simply told to do it, and it goes on. Now, this one will put the icing on the cake. The Attorney General's son-in-law is the co-founder of an education company that uses critical race theory in its work. Simply, the question is, did you seek, Mr. Garland, did you seek an ethics opinion? And of course, there's never an answer. Now we're getting to some root causes. You have an Attorney General. You have this man in high office over the law, his wife's husband, is in a company that promotes critical race theory. So the more of it is taught, the more books that are sold to all the schools, the richer his son-in-law gets. That's a conflict of interest by anybody's account. But Mr. Garland, he can't answer the question. Something as simple as this, and he'd judge himself? Well, it tells you you're dealing with a cold-blooded liar, period.
Your son-in-law makes a very substantial sum of money from a company involved in the teaching of critical race theory. Did you seek and receive a decision from an ethics advisor at the Department of Justice before you carried out an action that would have a predictable financial benefit to your son-in-law?
This memorandum is aimed at violence and threats.
I just asked a question. Did you
It
seek an
has
ethics
no
opinion?
predictable
Did you
effect
seek an
on-
ethics opinion?
It has no
Did you seek an ethics opinion? Judge, you know how to ask questions and answer them. Did you seek an ethics opinion?
You asked me whether I sought an ethics opinion about something that would have a predictable effect on something. This has no predictable effect in the way that you're talking about.
So if critical race theory is taught in more schools, does your son-in-law make more
This
money?
memo has nothing.
If critical race theory is taught in more schools, does your son-in-law make more money? Yes or no?
This memorandum has nothing to do with critical race
Will
theory
you answer
or
if you
any
sought an
other
ethics
kind
opinion?
of curriculum.
Will you
It has-
answer if you sought an ethics
I am
opinion?
answering the best I can.
Yes or no? Did you seek an ethics opinion?
This memorandum has
Did
nothing.
you seek an ethics opinion?
This memorandum has nothing to do with.
General, are you
critical race
refusing to answer if you sought an ethics
theory. I'm
opinion?
telling you that there's no possible.
So you're saying no. Just answer it directly. You know how to answer a question directly. Did you seek an ethics opinion?
I'm telling you that if I thought there was any reason to believe
An ex-judge, one who was put up for Supreme Court, an ex-judge and now the AG of the United States, he does not see any kind of a conflict of interest in that his son-in-law is making money off of the books that they are selling to the schools, of which wrote to him to call American parents terrorists, and he does so, and he sees no conflict of interest to even seek an ethics opinion? What more needs to be said? The next one. The AG is willing to call Trump supporters and parents terrorists, but he can't answer if left-wingers that forced their way into a federal building just 1 week before this hearing, he can't answer whether or not they are terrorists also.
Mission of the Department of Justice. So suffice it to say, it's clear that you feel very strongly about using the full force of your position to prosecute those involved in the January 6th protests. What is not clear, however, is if you will use the same force against violent left-wing domestic terrorists. Just last week, on October 14th, a group of extremist environmental and indigenous protesters forced their way into the Department of Interior. They fought with and injured security and police officers, sending some of those officers to the hospital. The extremists violently pushed their way into a restricted government building in an attempt to thwart the work of the Department of Interior. Police arrested at least 55 protesters on site, but others got away. Mr. Garland, do you believe that these environmental extremists who forced their way into the Department of Interior are also domestic terrorists?
I'm not going to be able to reference that specific incident since this is the first I know about it, but I will say that the department does not care.
This is the first that you know about an incident where protesters forced themselves into a federal government building right here in D.C. Like you didn't hear about this at all.
This particular example, it doesn't mean the Justice Department doesn't know about it, but I personally haven't heard about it before, what you're saying right now.
Okay, so the Attorney General of the United States of America just tells us that at this hearing right now, when this man is just informing him that there was a group of leftist, environmentalist wackos that stormed a federal building, sending police officers to the hospital. Just 1 week before that had been carried over major news. I know about it. Thousands and millions in America knows about it. But yet a week after it happened, before this congressional hearing, the Attorney General of the United States of America has just now been made aware. He didn't even know that it happened. He's being asked, are they terrorists? Like the Trump supporters are terrorists? Are they terrorists for doing the same thing? That you're blaming others for being terrorists? And he won't answer. Are they terrorists for busting into a federal building, sending police officers to jail? Are they terrorists? He can't answer. But he can send out a memo saying that American mothers and fathers, parents, are terrorists for going to school board meetings. This is corruption at the highest level. The next one. The AG refuses again to call the same act done by leftists a terrorist act.
All right, I'll make it a little clearer for you. And most of us are lawyers here, so we use evidence in court. So you got two pictures here. One picture is from January 6th of individuals forcing themselves into the Capitol. This other picture is extremists forcing themselves into the Interior Department. So looking at these pictures, and I know you say you're not aware of this, which blows my mind that you're not aware of violent extremists forcing their way into a department right here in Washington, D.C., into a federal building. But just with these evidence, with these two pictures that you see here of people forcing themselves into a federal building, would you call both of these acts domestic terrorism?
Look, I'm not going to comment about particular matters. This is a matter that...
I'm not asking you to comment on a particular... I'm asking you to comment on these two photos. You have two pictures of individuals forcing themselves into a government building right here in Washington, D.C. And one, as I laid out, very welcomely call them domestic terrorists, but you're refusing to call groups like this, who commit the same atrocities here in Washington, D.C., domestic terrorists.
One I know the facts of, the other I don't know the facts of.
Now the Attorney General, judge, and one that was put up for Supreme Court, and now the Attorney General of the United States, now he even has a picture to look at, as if he didn't already know. You've got two pictures. One of the leftists going into the courthouse, going into the federal building. Another of the Trump January 6th thing. Well, the two pictures looks identical. You couldn't possibly even tell them apart. He's now got a picture to look at. And he still can't make a comment because he knows nothing of the matter. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember the old Hogan's Heroes, where Sergeant Schultz's famous line was,
"I know nothing.
When it comes to these leftist organizations, they can do whatever they want to, and you pretend not to even see it. The bribe, the blinded eye. But Trump supporters, mamas and daddies, parents, oh, you see every move they make. They're terrorists. But these that did exactly the same thing and worse,
I know nothing.
Well, I don't even know about that, the Attorney General says. And then finally, an attack on a federal building harming police officers that was widely reported by the media. The AG of the United States didn't even know it happened until this hearing a week later.
But clearly, based on the pictures, clearly what has occurred, factually what's been widely reported in all sorts of different American outlets, that these individuals forced themselves into a building here in the Department of Interior, and you're refusing right here today before the American people to say, yes, that's the same type of activity that I'm going to bring the full force of the Department of Justice to come against, regardless of the ideology which you have said in the past, but you're refusing to do that today.
I know nothing.
So the point is made, and it's made clear. If one cannot see the systemic injustice, you're dealing with the highest official of law in the United States of America. And I suppose really there needs to be nothing more said. For if you're not able to see what you just saw and understand exactly what it means to this country, then you are willfully blind. Nonetheless, when you see this level of destruction of the law, you are now seeing and witnessing exactly what the Bible said and meant when it said, "Woe be unto you when the wicked bear rule."
I know nothing.
field for my Lord. I was alone and idle, I was a sinner too. Then I heard a voice from heaven say there's work for you to do. So I took my master's hand and joined the Christian band. Now I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. I left my home and kindred, bound for the promised land. Hear the grace of God upon me and my Bible in my hand. In distant lands I've trod, crying, sinner, come to God. Yeah, I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Yeah, I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Oh, yes, I am. Yeah, I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. I promised him that I'd serve him till I died. I'm on the battlefield for my Lord. Savior, I'll need him with a smile, for he healed my wounded spirit and he owned me as a child. Around the throne of grace, he prepared my soul a place.